Everybody's doing okay? Good afternoon, Glakuho. I'm honored to be presenting this webinar today to an outstanding region. Obviously, you know that. A shout out to my friends at the University of Michigan, Go Blue. I just recently moved there to begin a PhD program, and I miss my Glakuho friends dearly. I think it's quite fitting when somebody asked me to do this today. 3 years ago when I moved to the Glakuho region, I didn't know anybody on my campus, but already through social media and the connections I'd made from those small communities had come into the region fully equipped with a handful of acquaintances and support systems from the region. My connection through Twitter and with other leaders in the region connected me immediately to a region I had just joined, and so an already intimidating process was eased by warm welcomes to the region by many people, and so I'm very grateful for that. And when I was asked to gather folks to talk about professional networking via social media, I thought back to those days and wondered how my transition would have been different if I didn't have that type of support. And so at my first Glakuho conference, I finally met people in real life who had been cheering me on and supporting my transition from the very beginning. And so I think that there's a lot. We're going to cover a lot today and some valuable lessons and some things just to hang on to. So we also have a hashtag today, hashtag Connect365. So if you want to use that, please do. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar as we cover some, some basic areas of professional networking online. I've got two very talented and capable presenters with me today, and I will let them introduce themselves and we'll begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Gallagher. I'm a hall director at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and I will be the one moderating the questions today as well as participating in part of the presentation. I want to take a moment to thank the Professional Foundations Committee of Glakuho, which I am a member of, but specifically Lauren Corey, who put this whole webinar together and recruited myself and Julie and our third mystery presenter to present. So thank you to Lauren.
Hi, everybody. I'm the third mystery presenter. My name is Torry Brouillard Bruce. I'm Executive Director of Housing and Greek Life out at University of the Pacific in California. For those of you who are wondering, California is not part of Glakuho. I know it's hard to grasp that concept. I'm holding it down over here in Wakuho, but very excited to get out and have a conversation with my friends in the Great Lakes region about social networking. And I think I'll get the opportunity to start off the conversation about the why. And I think the critical aspect of that is the why for me is I have the opportunity to give a presentation to my friends in Glakuho and my professional colleagues within the Great Lakes region because of social networking and that ability to spread the boundaries of what interactions are. And so what I wanted to do to set the tone for the conversation today was last week, as we were working on this presentation, I sent a simple tweet out and through Facebook as well, just asking people in one word or less, which equals one word, why they use social networking and social media to engage as a person or as a professional. And some of the common themes that came up, community, and I think that fact, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today, sharing of information, education and learning and growth that takes place, the ability to engage with individuals, to engage with groups. Introvert-friendly was something that came up, and I'll give some benefit to that and the fact that I'm a very extroverted person, but for me, the concept of social media is a little bit of a level playing field for conversation, and I was very glad that somebody put that in there. Grumpy Cat, somebody put that up as well, and so people could use it for the humor and kind of the debrief of life that takes place when you're reviewing some of the status posts and updates on social media, Twitter and Facebook. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Julie Leos. Here we go. It's going. Perfect. So honestly, the true benefit of why I highlighted that was it's kind of this meta information. I asked a question about why social media was important. And within 15 minutes, I had 15 different people sharing me 15 different thoughts. And I think that really stretches the boundary of where social media comes into play, especially within our profession. We all have this working knowledge, and we're somewhat isolated on our campuses and taking care of our day-to-day business, whether you have an area of responsibility, a building, a department, and you're really living within that bubble that takes place on your college campuses and within your divisions and areas. And social media allows you to pop that bubble every once in a while. And I know for me, as an executive director, I've been in my position for about 2 years now. It's been a great opportunity for me to just kind of put some of the things out into the atmosphere about what's happening within my world and get some feedback. Some of that negative feedback, like, Torry, you're just really being a patty poopy pants, or, that's really interesting stuff. I'm going through some of the same things. And, misery loves company at sometimes, but also contentedness loves company. And how do we find that? And I think with the different people sharing their different ideas, it really came to light as I was going through this activity. It's a relatively safe environment to identify connection around common themes and interests. And, Julie will talk a little bit about the micro communities. And, if you're comfortable connecting one-on-one with people, then you can start stretching that and that little ripple effect of, oh, maybe there's more than just one person who has this shared common theme or has this shared frustration, or we can engage in dialogue about certain things and do it at a smaller level, so it's not this big concept of social media. Resource and information sharing grows exponentially. The snowball effect of, if you put something out there and then somebody retweets it or somebody reposts it and another person comments, and before you know it, 140 characters turns into a global conversation, especially within our profession. And I think that's where the learning truly happens. It's what is out there, what's being taken hold of, and what is beginning to snowball to gather information. Ability to meet virtually prior to meeting in person. And this is a great story because Brian Gallagher, one of the other presenters, I actually knew, and for those of you, because you can't see me, I'm using air quotes when I say knew, Brian Gallagher before I even met him. We had a chance to connect via social media. That led to a phone conversation before we met at a TPE. And the first time we sat down in real life, face-to-face, it was as if we already had a conversation before. And it really expedites that learning curve of meeting somebody and getting to know somebody, and really allows you to get off on a right foot when you get that chance to sit down and have conversation. And truly, at the end of the day, social media is just communication. It's a great form of communication. If you're not communicating, what are you doing? I mean, I think as human beings, we're naturally meant to be communicating. And so the key is, why do we communicate? Well, for some of us, it's to communicate to learn. Some of us, it's to communicate for connectedness. But at the end of the day, we're all needing to communicate, and that's really that two-way street. Asking questions, receiving information, providing feedback. It's that continual loop of communication. So I wanted to talk about the why before I talked about the how, or the most critical component. That's the you. And so we're going to start with talking about brands. And I've had this conversation before and led a presentation at other conferences just about the individual as a brand. And so I shared a few common brand themes with this audience, knowing that, whenever we see this, whenever we see Starbucks, and I'm sorry for the East Coast folks who like Dunkin' Donuts or another area. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm contractually obligated to use the Starbucks logo. But for me, when I see Starbucks, I think warmth and a great presence and somebody who spells my name wrong on my coffee cup. When I see the Nike brand, I think, oh my God, I got to get out and get a run in. So all of these brands elicit some sort of response. Well, brand people, brand managers are geniuses. I mean, they know how to craft a brand so that when somebody sees an image, they think something, they feel something. Well, it's not just, it's an actual science. And so I want to show people a benefit ladder. And I had a chance to review this with a person who runs brands at an agency before, and I thought this is super critical for us as human beings to understand that we actually are our own brand. And so if you start at the bottom of this benefit ladder, you'll see that there's service attributes. Those are the functional, physical, and tangible qualities you possess. So let's start on the left side of that ladder and go up the blue arrow. We have functional and physical, tangible qualities so that our attributes are intended to provide or deliver something. So our service attributes are then our benefit to somebody else, the end user, so that when the end user receives it, they know what they're trying to receive, and then they have some emotional benefit to that. That's the top of the brand ladder. But it doesn't just go up. It comes back down. Individuals have a feeling about the benefits they're going to receive, and so that perception of, if I see this, I'm going to receive this, and then the service provider. So not only when you go to a Starbucks, you expect to have something because you have that emotional connection to it. If you get it, you're like, oh, yes, that's right. If you don't get it, there's that disconnect or that discord within the benefit. And so we do that as people as well. And, I think the key is not a lot of people take that into consideration, that we are a walking brand. We are a walking brand of ourselves. And so, Julie, if you could swap to the next slide. So going back to the why we communicate with others so that our brand stays active, so that our brand stays relevant to what's going on out there. You have to understand that you might be portraying your specific brand, but also other people are perceiving it. And so not only do you can't really control how they perceive it, but you can control how it's portrayed, and your job is to get those to line up. What images are you trying to portray? What does your picture or pictures look like within social media? What type of images or words are you using? When someone reads your post or reads your profile or reads an email from you, what do they think of you? And I honestly think of it that way. Like, I want people to, whenever they see a tweet from me, I want them to hear my voice. I want them to know, and not necessarily literally my voice, but just kind of that proverbial concept of I speak in a specific way. I usually probably have some sort of witty quip that goes out there, maybe a little smart alecky. That's who I am. That's how I am with my staff. That's how I am with my family. That's how I am with my profession. And so people wouldn't have a reason to think, oh, I didn't expect that from you. So I'm uniquely me through all of that. Now, that's gotten me in trouble at times. I will admit that. And I've had to learn to understand that, oh, I guess I wouldn't have done that in walking into a business room and said that, so why would I do that in social media? But it's uniquely me. The key is just to make sure that there's consistency in who you portray and who you actually are, because that will come up. Because within virtual space, assumptions about people are super hyper-magnified. You hear a lot about, they're Twitter famous. Well, it's usually because people have never met this person, and they get this sense of this grandiose personality of people on social media and the stuff that they put out there, and then they ascribe that to them. And so when they meet them, they better match up, and that person better have some of that characteristic. Or the same thing, if somebody's continually putting out Debbie Downer posts, you're going to think, boy, I'm not sure if I really want to meet that person, because when I talk to them, it's just going to be wah, wah. So you have to understand that it's easy for it to become magnified in that virtual space. So that's about the you. The next part of this is to really take the you and to drop it into those micro-communities, because micro-communities can be a one-to-one relationship, but it can be a small group of people that have a shared common interest and theme. And so Julie's going to talk a little bit more about that, so I'm going to pass that over to her.
Thank you, Torry. What Torry didn't tell you all is that he's branded himself as Awesome Sauce. He's way too humble to admit that, though, I'm pretty sure. I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about how to make social media not sometimes seem so cumbersome. I think that a lot of times some folks don't find that type of networking appealing because the thought of having to communicate with so many people or through various mediums is kind of overwhelming. And I understand that knowing where to start can be scary and can be intimidating. And Torry talked a little bit about at the beginning, that this can be very introvert friendly, and I think it can be if people have the right tools and to know. So there are over 450 million blogs worldwide. There's 900 million Facebook users and over 140 million Twitter users. I guess that's what you call them, Twitter users. Well, call it what you want, but people are on there, and 140 million people is a lot of people. And we know that for some people, even 10 people is a lot of people. So being mindful of that and being authentic that we want about people wanting to be their authentic self, we wanted to offer the suggestion of micro-communities and making this smaller for you. And so I think of Twitter, for instance, and in my experience from day one, we had I had so many followers and people to follow, and I was overwhelmed by the traffic. I couldn't figure out how to manage, and finally, just by sending out a tweet, somebody replied and said, hey, just favorite them. Oh, hello, genius. Okay, and then I can go back to them. So I think about what was it that made things smaller for me and less overwhelming, and that was one of the things that did. The same thing can be said about finding or starting specialized small groups that fit some of your needs or some of your interests and can help make a big group really small, right? Kind of like what we say about our residence halls. It makes if you're on a large campus, living in a residence hall can make that experience feel like, the campus is really small. So recently I started reading a book called Connected, and I have it here in front of me, and they tell a story in there, a very powerful story about groups, and I kind of want to retell it because really it's a story about us, right? So I'm going to read it because I don't want you all to hear the story wrong. So imagine your house is on fire. Luckily, a cool river runs nearby, but you are all alone. You run back and forth to the river, bucket in hand, toting gallon after gallon of water to splash on your burning home. Unfortunately, your efforts are useless. Without some help, you will not be able to carry water fast enough to outspace the inferno. Now suppose that you are not alone. You have 100 neighbors, lucky for you, right? And they have all the motivation to help. And lucky also for you, they each have a bucket. If your neighbors are sufficiently strong, they can run back and forth to the river, and they can dump buckets of water on the fire. 100 people tossing water on your burning house is clearly better than you doing it by yourself. The problem is that once they get started, your neighbors will waste a lot of time running back and forth, so they're going to get tired very easily. So fortunately, this is, we can move forward and say, what are we going to do, right? So your 100 neighbors form a line, and instead of running back and forth, they form a line from your house to the river, passing full buckets of water towards your house and empty buckets towards the river. Not only does the bucket brigade arrangement mean that people do not have to spend time and energy walking back and forth to the river, it also means that the weaker people who may not be able to walk and carry a heavy bucket long distances have something that they can offer. And the reason why I wanted to share that story is because when we think about a group, and especially the small groups that we can create on social media, we are so powerful as a group, and the whole is really greater than the sum of its parts, right? So the groups there's power in groups when they are efficient and they're after the same goal, and I feel the same way about small groups that we create. When small groups of people are committed to and loyal to a project and an ideal, it makes it easier not only to find your way in your community, but also to find purpose. And so I'm going to change the slide here, see if I can talk and change the slide at the same time. Oh, good, I can. So take this slide, for instance, which is a shot of the Women in Housing Facebook community. So this group of almost 1,000 members, which I want you to notice that is a lot smaller than 900 million members that are totally on Facebook. And together they encourage each other, they encourage other women in housing, they make connections about research that they're doing, they spread the word about jobs that are available and make suggestions of what the Women in Housing Network through Akuhoai could do, right? So you see, you don't have to friend the entire network to make a difference, but here's this small group that is really making a difference for each other and making some changes. And these kinds of groups are created to make a big world small, and that's what's really important. And this slide, for instance, it's some of our Twitter hashtag communities, for example. You may or not be familiar, but pulling together some common interests through hashtags that have been an important part of having people become familiar with each other via Twitter. This essay grad chat that's before you, many of the experiences of our friends in graduate programs are shared across the country. So they're experiencing very similar things. And luckily we have found that it's our responsibility to share in community about how to overcome those challenges and to share helpful hints. And so we've also seen that the essay chat community has grown so that people can talk at specific times about what's going on within student affairs and some of the challenges that we're facing on our campuses. We've also seen the WL SALT community rise, which was started by a group of fabulous women who saw the need for a community to support other women through challenging days and a way to build women up for the successes that they've gained. So just a very powerful community that's been created. And also, perhaps you are familiar with the SA Fit community that has also grown over the past few years and really just had the opportunity to bring people together over a common interest about getting student affairs more fit and focusing on supporting each other, and it's been a really powerful group that has formed. And so I think that what I wanted to do was show a video about SA Fit, because really what it does is it outlines kind of how a group forms and what it's done for people. And but we can't show it today. So what we're going to do is we're going to email everybody who's a part of this webinar today, and we'll send you the link so that you can watch the video and kind of just get the idea of what we're talking about. That sometimes building a professional network via social media or just virtually seems overwhelming, but it's not, because there are small groups that have been created because of that to help you to find your niche in whatever it is that you want to do, and to build those connections, and so that you can have a group that you go to, and that can be a group that you can connect with and get support from. And so I will encourage you to talk to your colleagues, to talk to your friends perhaps that you have met on social media, and see what kind of groups that they're in. Or if there isn't something that's already created that you are interested in, create it on your own. You'll be surprised to see that there will be many people who are also interested in the things that you're interested in, and will be very grateful for your initiative in starting something new. And I think that these communities are so powerful, and is where I personally have met some of my dearest friends and colleagues. And I will now pass it on to Brian, because what Brian's going to talk about is a little bit about, okay, once you set your brand, you know who you are, like you kind of are involved with social media, you're a part of these groups, you're making connections, you're meeting people. What do you do now? Like, what happens afterwards? And so I think that that's one of the things that we thought was really important also, and Brian is fabulous, and so he'll be able to share that with you. Brian?
Thanks, Julie. So I will start with the when Brian saw Torry Bruce for the first time in his life story. So Torry and I had connected through the SA Chat community on Twitter when I was still in grad school and I was starting my job search, and I'd asked him for resume review help and stuff like that, and we connected, and he'd been pretty awesome, and I think we'd even Skyped or something, and it was a great connection. And so there I am, I'm at TPE, and I'm wearing the suits, and I'm nervous like everyone else is, and I'm feeling like I'm at TPE and it's overwhelming. And Torry comes around the corner, and he looks at me, and he says, "You're Brian Gallagher." And I stood up, and I looked at him. I thought to myself, this guy is, like, huge. Who is this person? And for those of you who don't know, Torry Bruce is probably 6'4", 8, 10, something like that. And just totally this ginormous, in real-life person who come over, give me a huge hug, all excited to talk with me in person. The two of us sat down, and he genuinely said, "So how's it going?" And we really talked about my interviews, and he was really encouraging. And I thought, wow, this is exactly 100% the same person who I've been talking with on Skype and on Twitter and on email. And he's 100% the same person, which is just, it's really neat to be able to have that in-person connection, something you've developed over the internet over time. So one of the reasons that we're talking about all this is with the GLACUHO conference coming up shortly in November. Profound wanted us to talk about this topic and really think about how can we take your network and activate it during the conference. And not only GLACUHO, but any conference. So one of the things I want to talk about was with GLACUHO specifically, we use the GLACUHO hashtag, which is the hashtag and then the word GLACUHO. I know Torry is tweeting it right now, or was a minute ago, and some other folks are tweeting about this webinar with our hashtag, but also the GLACUHO hashtag. And I think it's really important to just kind of watch that hashtag and see what people are putting out there. I know that I am often, not as often as I'd like, putting out articles out there or photos of different bulletin boards that my RAs are doing, and just kind of bragging on here are the cool things that we're doing here. But it's also a place where I ask for help. I'm looking for a resource for this, or I'm wondering about how people have held their RAs accountable for this type of thing. So I think it's important to follow that hashtag and then really see what's out there, and both what's out there content-wise and what's out there people-wise. And look for opportunities. If you're following the hashtag and someone asks you for an icebreaker and you've got one that you love, respond. Even if you don't know that person, and say, hey, here's the icebreaker that I do. Maybe you send them a link, or maybe you say, please email me and I'll send it to you, or whatever. Or you can type it in 140 characters, which is pretty impressive. But look for opportunities to connect with other people. And then start thinking about the conference and start looking for opportunities to connect with people who are headed to the conference. So I know I was actually just checking out the Google hashtag before our webinar. There were 3 or 4 people who just posted that they have registered for the conference. And so those might be people that you want to kind of check out a little bit. And literally look at their profile, read up on them. If you are a second-year graduate student or a third-year graduate student looking to start the job hunt, and they work at an institution you're interested in, like, this is someone you want to get to know, or at least you want to observe how they're putting stuff out there on Twitter. And so look for opportunities to connect with people, whether that's an individual, whether it's an institution you want to know about. And definitely, use this opportunity to figure out, like, hey, do I want to meet with these people in person? And if so, reach out to connect with them. And you can either direct message them on Twitter, or you can actually tweet at them, or you can always go to their institution's website, find their email address, and email them and say, hey, you don't know me, this is who I am, I follow you on Twitter, I think you put out some really great stuff, I will be at the Gallagher conference, I would love to have coffee with you, are you available? And I think most people will say, yeah, I would love to connect with you, and find a time to make that happen. Julie, you want to do the next slide? So during the conference itself, when we were planning this, we talked about the when you're walking down the hallway and then creeper mode sets in, and you're like, oh my gosh, I recognize that person. I think I follow them on Twitter. Our hope is that you will not revert to creeper mode all the time. It will definitely happen. There'll be that awkward moment. You'll be in the elevator. You'll look at the person next to you. You'll look at their name tag, and you'll squint at their name, and you'll think to yourself, I think I recognize that Twitter hashtag or handle or that name. I think this person looks familiar. Maybe their photo is from the 80s. I'm not sure. And then they're looking at you the same way. Yes, it's going to be awkward. Just say, hey, my name is Brian. I think I follow you on Twitter. I'm not sure. What's your name? And just interact with them. Similar to how we would with any of our residents in our building. Just reach out to them and break that ice. If you do see someone who's walking by you who looks familiar and they're not like running to a session, feel free to walk up to them and introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm not sure, but I think I follow you on Twitter. My name is Brian. Who are you? And they'll introduce themselves. And it's that moment to connect and find out, where do these people work? What do they do? What kind of positions do they have? And what are their experiences been? Another thing that I will use the Gallagher hashtag for is finding sessions that I want to go to. I know throughout the day people will post, you should come to my session. It's session number 212. It'll be in Grand Ballroom ABCDE. And, that will encourage me to open up the program book or look in the app and say, oh, I really want to go to that session because it's interesting what they're talking about. It's also a great opportunity, like I said, to look and see what people are attending various sessions and connecting with those people in real life, in person, in the session. It could be that you're both in the session, you tweet a couple things about the session, and then at the end of the session you say, hey, I saw that you were tweeting, and you go over to them, introduce yourself to them, and you connect with them that way. That's during the conference. And I think, what is so crucial is following up after the conference. And, we're all familiar with, if you get someone's business card during a conference, to flip it over and write on the back how you met them, why they matter, who they are to you, what connection you had. You can do the same thing with Twitter connections. When you meet someone in person, take a moment to jot down on your notepad that you met, whoever it was, or myself or anyone else, and you connected with them and you both talked about how much you love cooking, and that was a great connection for you. And then when you get back to campus, maybe you send them a tweet and say, hey, Brian, it was really great to talk with you at the conference. I enjoyed speaking with you about how we both make chocolate cakes, or some sort of connections like that. Another thing is it's important if you have promised to deliver any materials to anyone, such as notes from from your session if you're a presenter, or if it was an icebreaker or some sort of activity and someone has asked you to send it to them, definitely email it to them or send them to them, because it's important to remember that your credibility is crucial. We've all talked about how this is a small field and people know each other, but definitely making sure to follow up and follow through. And I think the final point is really just keep those connections going. I have really enjoyed being friends with Torry and Julie and many other professionals in this field who I met on Twitter and then I interacted with at a conference. I've never seen Torry or Julie not at a conference. For me, they are conference friends. But also, when I'm having a rough week, I send Julie an email and I say, hey, we need to chat, and we chat and we talk, and it's real talk. We really talk about what are the ups and downs of the day-to-day of work, or with my partner, or with whatever's going on, or with Julie's recent move, and really process it. And it's an opportunity to kind of bounce ideas off of someone who has your corner, has your back, but doesn't have any of the pressures of dealing with the politics at your current institution. So I have found it to be a really valuable resource. So I think at this point I'm passing it back to Julie, or if there are any questions, we would entertain any questions. Oh yeah, there's the slide with our great pictures.
Yeah, so if there are any questions, Brian will let us know and we'll answer them.
So we're going to give folks another maybe 10 seconds to type something. Otherwise, it's looking like we've answered every question you could have possibly had, which is, what I would expect from this group.
Obviously.
Cool. So I think we're good.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you all for coming to the webinar. We appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, you can see before you that here are our Twitter handles. You can contact us at any time, and we'd be able to answer anything that you may need. I hope that today was helpful and answered some of your questions. And if it didn't, like I said, contact us. We'll send out an email telling you thank you again with the link to the video that we couldn't share today. And have a fantastic day. Enjoy the conference in a couple months, and be awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thanks.